All right, everyone. Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief DeMaio from Clinton PD in Connecticut, 37 years total in law enforcement. He has a bachelor's degree in political science, a master's degree in public administration, and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Welcome to the show, Chief DeMaio. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Of course, I'm looking forward to it. We were actually talking offline a little bit and we were cracking up. I think this is going to be a great conversation, but I want to just dive into a little bit about you. So give us a little bit of background.
I started my career in law enforcement here in Connecticut in September 11th, 1989. I don't know. You probably weren't born yet. I'm going to guess, but I don't know.
Almost, yeah.
So I have this conversation frequently in my building. We're a small department. I only have 27 sworn. And one day, about 2 months ago, I was back in roll call talking with my evening shift troops, and we determined that half of my department. I've been a cop longer than half of my department's been alive. So I
Um,
guess I've been at this for quite a bit. And I tell everyone now, I testify. I have a lot. I wear a lot of different hats. Obviously, I began my career in Lower Fairfield County, a town called New Canaan, Connecticut, very affluent suburb of basically of the city. Even though it's Connecticut, it's that tri-state area. So the vast majority of our inhabitants, our residents there, worked on Wall Street, hedge fund guys, big, very big money, like Greenwich. I think probably a lot of people I've heard of Greenwich and Darien and New Canaan, that kind of area. They call it the Gold Coast of Connecticut. So very different environment from where I am there. So I started there as a patrol officer and worked my way up through the ranks. I did training, recruitment, and testing and selection. I did investigations. I ran investigations. And then I left as the number two in 2016. I came here to Clinton and took over as chief of police here in Clinton, which is a shoreline community. We're about right about smack dab in the middle of the state, but all the way down on Long Island Sound. So our entire southern border is Long Island Sound. It's a smaller community. New Canaan was about 20,000 residents and about 28 square miles. With a very high expectation of services from the police department. So we had 50 sworn there. Here, it's a smaller population sitting, only 15,000 sitting population, but we have a lot of summer residents. So in the summer, we swell up probably another 8,000 residents between our summer rentals. We have 1,100 boat slips, so we get a lot of transient boating that comes into town. And we also have a very large shopping mall, which is literally right off the highway, within 100 yards of the entrance exit ramp to I-95, and that brings in about 4 million people a year. So we're
wow.
honestly policing. Our sitting population is 15,000, but we're honestly policing about 30,000 plus a day. So it keeps us very active. And I guess my start in law enforcement was I'd kind of toyed around with the idea when I was younger, as many people in my generation were, the Generation Xers. When we were in grade school, people would always ask, "What do you want to be?" And 9 times out of 10, it was, "You want to be a cop, or you want to be a fireman."
Mhm.
That was a normal answer, which is not the normal answer anymore, and we'll get into that later. But always just wanted to serve. I think it's a very this job for me. It's a very Christian pursuit. I would say it falls very much in line with my faith, and the idea is to just help people, to protect people, not only to protect them from crime, but to protect their rights, and just try and make the world a better place. So. I still get up every morning. I'm in this office every morning at 7:15 every morning after 37 years of doing this job, and I still come to work with the same mindset that I want to help people. And I think that's true of the vast majority of law enforcement. When I was young, I came from a divorced household. And I always wanted to have a big family. I have one sister, a younger sister, but my parents divorced. We moved away from where I grew up for a short period of time and moved back in with my grandparents. So I was raised by a different generation. My grandparents were World War II generation, the Great Depression. And so my grandmother and all her siblings were really my mentors and the people that raised me. And I'm very grateful for that because it's a different mindset. Everything was the world doesn't owe you anything. You owe the world something. And you should try to always give back and be positive. So um, I think you learn a lot from failure and from hardship. A lot of people, I think the modern take on it is that it's okay to be messed up, and it's okay. We can take some pills to, you know, relieve your anxiety, or everybody's messed up and it's okay to be messed up. That wasn't the way we got taught. We got taught, pick yourself up. You get knocked out to the ground, you keep getting up, and you keep getting up, and you keep getting up. And that really instills resilience, which I think is missing from a lot of the younger generations today. I don't think have that same level of resilience because it was never instilled to them, and they were actually trained and taught differently to say like, oh, it's okay that I can just shut down, it's all right because that's normal, and that was not normal for us.
Yeah.
So when I leave, I think I'm going to write a book called The Joy of Failure,
Mm-hmm.
because you learn so much more from failure than you do from success. Um, so I think I'm a very different leader. A lot of times it's been very difficult for me in this profession. I'm a very feeling person. I'm very intuitive, and I lead with the ideal of I'm here to help people. And this job, unfortunately, attracts a lot of ego. And it does attract a certain very strict personality that wants things done, you know, by the rules, by the book. Check A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B4. They don't skip any steps. Everything just goes. And I'm much more free form. I'm trying to understand like how this is affecting. What are we doing that's affecting? Number one, our mission, which is to keep Clinton safe, our town safe, and deliver services. But how is that impacting the general population and people that visit, people that are just passing through, and how is it affecting our troops? And a lot of times you can't have hard, fast rules. I mean, there's hard, fast laws, which again is a debate for another day, because now those seem to be our prosecutors are like, well, yeah, no, well, you could steal, but only so much, or so much is not a crime. It gets very confusing. But I think that is a big part of who most law enforcement is. I think at this point, at 37 years on, I've sat on so many hiring panels and so many interviews, and every time we ask the question, "Why do you want to be a police officer?" 99 times out of 100, it's because I want to help people. Nobody says I want to, get the power. I want to be in charge or whatever people may say or people may believe that people are doing this job for. The vast, overwhelming majority are in it because they want to help people. And that's exactly why I started in it 37 years ago. And that's why I continue at it this day, because it's a very important job. And in this whole defund the police movement of a few years ago and all the things that are happening, we had the protests here like everywhere else across the country. And I met with the protesters and I said, look, here where you want to have, it's really not a good spot. And people can't really hear you. They can't, it's dangerous. Why don't we do it over here? I'll help facilitate it for you. It's your First Amendment right. But these are the rules that we got to have. I can't have you, obstructing traffic. I can't have you being violent and doing all these things. And they're like, well, okay, yeah, but you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't. I said, at the end of all things, you need the police. Society needs the police, right? Because in our absence, what is there? There's martial law and mob rule. And I guarantee you, we do a better job than either one of those. And that's what's going to fill the void. But no one wants to see past that. I think everybody gets so locked into emotionally thinking that this is bad and I have to protest against it. No one really thinks it through to the next step. And I think, again, my generation, which was kind of really left to our own devices, and I think that's starting to become more and more talked about in recent years, is that, listen, we came home and there was nobody home, and I've had a job. I've worked since I was 11 years old because I had to make money, and I had to put myself through school, and I had to do. I didn't have any. I had to buy my own car, and I had to pay for my own insurance, and I had to do all these things. But that's fine. Most people say, "Well, that's terrible." No, but it's fine because it taught me that I'm very independent and I can do whatever needs to be done. I can do it, and if I can do it for myself, by extension, I can obviously do that to help others that need my help because I got a lot in the tank, and I can suffer a lot of slings and arrows. But I will tell you that after 37 years of doing this job, that this is probably the most toxic environment for law enforcement that I'd say arguably in the history of the country. I mean, in the 60s, there was definite problems and definite issues, but I think at least at that level, it was a segment of society which was protesting and having these things. And now it's a segment of society protesting and doing these things, but we're also being attacked from our own government, from our own legislatures, and them putting restraints on us and saying horrible things about us, which are untrue. And it's just it gets difficult to kind of keep pushing that off and keep your shield up. So a lot of younger people that don't have the skill set to understand it or have the experience level to have the resiliency to stave that off or the character to say, hey, listen, this is not what it is, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Um, it becomes difficult, and that's why we see a staffing crisis, I think, across the country.
Yeah, there's a few things I want to dissect in what you just said. The very first thing you said about feeling old, it happens quick. And
Yes.
and I actually recently I had someone say something and they were like, "Yeah, probably before you were born." And I was like, "Actually, I'm like, I was here all of the 90s. I can relate a lot to what you said
Yeah.
about coming home, being alone, working since
Yeah.
14, kind of that upbringing generation. And it is interesting because I do think as a parent you want your kid to have more than you had, or you want there maybe to be an easier path than you had. But I do think that having the ability to fail and to get back up and to keep going is very important. And I say this all the time, but failure is absolutely necessary for success. There is not anybody at the top of their game who hasn't failed a lot, and
Correct.
they probably failed more than they succeeded. But to your point, they were able to get back up and keep going. I do think that I do think two things can exist at once. I do think that you can have emotions. You can, you know, seek resources for things. You can recognize when things are hard, and you can keep going. And I think sometimes you need those resources or those things to keep going. And what you said earlier about, teaching that it's okay to shut down. I think that we need to teach how do you keep going, and if you need resources in order to keep going, that's okay too. But how can we have that message of how do we get back to baseline as quickly as possible? How do we keep moving forward? But it does happen quick when you feel like you're the old person in the room for sure. I've had people come up to me and say that I helped them out in academy in like 2018, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, or people with tattoos that say like 2000 and something, and all the
Yeah.
all the young kids are saying that the old people were born in the 1900s. That's like a new thing. And I'm like,
No.
that is crazy that you
Yeah.
guys are saying 1900s as if we're just like ancient. But I do think that a lot of people from all generations, I think that a lot of people are afraid of failure. And I had someone, or I heard this the other day, and I thought this was a really interesting question. They said, are you afraid of failure, or are you afraid of other people seeing you fail? And really, if we think about it, if we were to fail on our own and no one was around to see it, would we care as much? If you're in the woods and you fail at something, like you would probably just dust it off quicker and keep going and try again. But I think what we're really afraid of is other people seeing us fail. We're
And
afraid of that like judgment of failure.
and that's exactly. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. And my daughter is 20. My son is 22. And my daughter's 20. She's a student at Fordham University. Brilliant, super talented, and struggles with this all the time about, well, I'm afraid, she's afraid to put herself out because what are other people going to judge her on, or what are other people going to think about? And I'm like, you got to get past that. And then, and my wife is very, she's a loving person, she's a beautiful person, and I keep trying to tell her that our job is really to let them fail. Like, my job is to pad the landing area, right? You're going to fall on your face, and my job is to make sure you don't die or seriously disfigure yourself. But I want you to fall, and I want you to get back up and see that, okay, that's all behind me now.
Mhm.
And I guess it's harder for a mother than it is for a father, especially a father that's been 37 years in law enforcement and has just seen all these things. But I think you hit the nail right on the head. And unfortunately, this little device here is the bane of human society as we know it. You and I were, actually, when I was in school, they still were telling us we were going to die in an ice age. and then it was going to be a nuclear attack, and and you've suffered through all these things, but this is really what has divided human society worse than anything in history, in human history. We don't have, I don't think we have the collective consciousness, moral code, spirituality, whatever you want to say, to understand that how divisive this tool is. And it has the power to do great things, but it has the power to conversely to do devastatingly horrible things. And I think if you grew up with it, obviously we did. I never grew up with it. When we had a phone, I actually had a rotary dial phone,
Yep.
right? And people called, and you had to be home, and you had to be in one room because you couldn't move around. It was still connected to the wall. Um, but our children have grown up with cell phones, and they get cell phones when they're like 5 years old. And then, when they go to first grade, that's what you give them. You give them a cell phone, and they're so connected to this thing. And I don't think that we have taught them the coping skills or the reasoning skills to understand, put the proper amount of emphasis on it. It becomes all consuming, and I always, my heart aches for this whole generation of children that really have no space to become themselves and find themselves. Like, when we go to school, and when I was younger, you get beat up or you get a bully picking on you, and you got to figure out, you go home and you regroup. Like, well, how am I gonna deal with this, right? But I didn't have it constantly. They weren't calling my house every 5 minutes saying, "I'm gonna pound you tomorrow. I'm gonna pound you. I'm gonna pound you." Or, sending me text, "Yeah, I'm gonna kill you tomorrow when I see you." So there was no downtime to kind of figure that out. I had to figure that out and then address it, right? Um, Kids really don't have that opportunity, and they don't understand that just because one person says something, that's one voice. It's not a million voices, but it's hard to discern that on the phone. And I think that's a real problem that we're going to have to come to grips with as a society, and we're going to have to put some guardrails up, because now we put guardrails on everything else, but this is still pretty much free game, and everything we do is smoke and mirrors. There's no real preventative measures or protective measures for people, for the destructive side of what social media does in
Yeah.
society.
Well, I think going back to what you said about failing, I think that there's so much confidence that's gained from failing and then succeeding. When you do hard things, you know that you can then do hard things. And if you've never done anything hard or you've never failed, you don't know that you can. And I'm going to put this in a very simple example. It's very simple. I just started skiing like recently in my old age. I think I've gone 3 times skiing and I've never fallen skiing. Do you know what my biggest fear is? Falling, because I've
Yeah,
never done it. I don't know how to fall. And so, as soon as I fall for the first time, what is that going to do? It's going to build confidence in me because it's going to say, hey, I've fallen before. I know how to do it. I know how to get back up. And so, I think
right.
helping each other to build confidence. But I think what we need to do is also be mindful of how are we judging other people? Are we creating an environment where people feel safe to fail? And we can think of this even, within an organization, is there peer pressure in a positive way or a negative way? Are we
Right.
creating environments where people feel like they can mess up or fail? And I had a chief say there's a difference between mistakes and misconduct, but it's this idea of like,
Absolutely.
can you make mistakes? Do you have an environment where people are supportive of your success and being like,
Yes.
hey, like, let's mentor you, let's teach you, let's like get you on the right track? Or is there a culture of judgment? And I think that when you can create that culture of support, then people aren't as, fearful of that judgment, and then they're more empowered to make those mistakes.
Absolutely, 100%. I would agree with that. And our mantra here is that if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not working, because this job is so complex.
Hmm.
And we tell all of our new officers, we want you to go out there and work. And listen, there's not a mistake that you can make out there that hasn't been made before.
Yep.
The important thing is that you bring it to our attention as soon as you know that it occurred, and we can rectify it. There's two things that I will not tolerate, and that is maliciousness and untruthfulness. Those two things drop, we have a real problem, and we'll get right to the point of it. And it's probably going to be negative discipline. I very rarely discipline people because I don't need to, right? And I don't think negative discipline is not a positive motivator, right? It's going to cause people to do just the bare minimum so they don't get punished again, but it's not going to make them good officers. So we always tell people, as long as the mistake you made, you were trying to do the best thing, and you believed you were doing the right thing at the time. All you need to do is please bring it to us. And you see this again and again and again in the media, right? It's not really so much the act; it's what you did afterwards, and you lied about it, and you tried to cover it up, and you got rid of evidence, and you destroyed records and those types of things. That the your response is actually worse than the offense, and that compounds it. So I think we do need to do that, and every organization has a culture, and that's why I was brought into this from another agency. I truly believe that if you have a good, solid, healthy agency that's been doing the right things all along, you should be able to have leaders from that organization come up and be the next leaders of it. The only time you need to go outside is when you don't have anywhere to go. Or you need a real paradigm shift and you need a real culture shift. And that's what I was brought in here 10 years ago. They needed a culture shift, and it wasn't going to happen from the inside because the culture just wasn't there. And you got to bring in, throw water on it, for lack of a better thing.
I have my next question is going to be kind of a big one. So let me know if we need to kind of dissect it. But earlier you said that when you were growing up, the most common answer from kids of what they wanted to be when they grow up was policeman or firefighter. And that's not the case anymore. Can you dive into that a little bit and explain why you think that that's not the case? Why you think that recruitment and retention is so hard today in today's policing world, and what do you think is the solution or the solve to these challenges?
So, I mean, there's a multitude of factors. And I think, for my generation growing up, you looked at, the service industries, firefighters and police officers were looked up people in the community. And when you went to school, you were taught, if you have a problem, go to the police officer, go to the firefighter. These are the people in your community that are pillars of your community that are there to help you and they're there to serve. And now we're teaching people that we're not gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're not gonna, everybody in government's no good, and the police are evil and they're racist, and that's being taught in the schools. I mean, it's not my opinion. We have documented cases of that all across the nation. So that is certainly hurting us. And when we started, like I said, back in '89, when I started, listen, you knew if you got this job, uh, you were going to, number one, be able to help people, which I thought was, very important to me. But also, you had a steady job, right? And no matter what the economy did, if you did your time, you got to a certain point, you'd be able to retire and you would be taken care of. You'd have money, you'd have a pension, you'd have probably health care. And that has slowly been eroded over the decades. A lot of places went in the early 2000s. They got rid of their pension plans and they went to 401ks. And that started a lot of journeyman approaches where, guys would go on to a department just to get hired. They'd work there for 3 or 4 years. And then when they had enough experience and time, they could go apply to a place that had a pension. So what happens? They take all that money that went into their 401k, that's their money. They take it with them. So you just paid an entry level officer top level pay for 3 years and he just left you with a hole. And now what was the cost? There's no cost savings there. But trying to get towns to understand that and trying to get some municipal governments to understand that, they are here in Connecticut finally understanding. And I think across the country that you're seeing pensions implemented again. The other thing is that, most people don't want to admit that this is a toxic career. This is a high stress career. And our officers, men and women on a daily basis, are confronting, horrible, life-changing, shocking catastrophes. I read somewhere that the average human, you know, goes through maybe 6 critical incidents in a lifetime. The average police officer goes through 18 of them in a month, and stretch that over a 20-year career. And there are physiological effects to that. We die, like I think statistically 8 to 12 years. If you're a police officer, if you had a law enforcement career, you're going to die 8 to 12 years sooner than whatever class you're in, male or female, uh, on the average. You see tons of substance abuse in this. We see tons of suicide. We see tons of marital problems, depression, anxiety, all these. I mean, it just keeps coming. So the idea was that you came and it's such a hard career that you do your 20 years and then you move on, right, to something else and be productive in another arena. But that's changed now. I myself, I'm an anomaly, obviously. Uh, I be on a pretty thick skin, and I keep doing this. But even I am done. I'm at the end of my career now. So they wanted me. I've done 10 years here in Clinton. They asked me to sign on for another 5 years. I just I don't have it in me. And at some point, you have to realize that this is not my generation anymore. I really don't think the way I was brought up in a completely different way. The state of Connecticut is very punitive towards law enforcement. We have tons and tons of oversight. We have tons and tons of restrictions. It makes it very difficult to do our job. I'm constantly testifying in front of the state legislature for ways to improve our recruitment and retention. And the atmosphere is really hostile. It's toxic, and they don't ask. When you pass certain legislation, law enforcement knows what the collateral damage is going to be, but they don't care. They don't bother to ask. They just push it through, and then everybody kind of turns a blind eye to it. And then all of a sudden they say, well, we're going to try and do something else to alleviate this problem. Well, you created the problem when you created this legislation, which if you had asked us, we would have told you that. But you didn't even have the common courtesy to come and ask us. So it becomes a very difficult proposition to do the job. And I always say to myself, I said, I don't want to be I came into this job to help people, and I consider myself a pretty positive person. And I don't want to be that old curmudgeon guy who's just mad about everything and complaining about everything. That's not helpful for an organization. It's not helpful for a community, and it's not the job that we do. So, I signed up for one more year just to try and get our in-house staff ready to smoothly transition. And hopefully, we've got a great crew that's dedicated, but they're very young and they just need experience because, like we talked about before, failing and moving forward from those failures, there also has to be a lot of exposure to a lot of incidents. And you could be the smartest guy in the room, and you could have got straight A's and been on high honors and the dean's list and graduated magna cum laude. But if you haven't experienced a lot of these things, it doesn't hold a lot of weight. You have to experience and you have to fail. And that's where I want you to fail. I want you to fail at a lower level, and where you've got a support system that we can fix that and rectify it. And you can see that, okay, wow, next time that happens and the stakes are higher, this is not my first rodeo, right? I've seen it before. I know that last time I did this and oh my God, that happens. We can't do that. So what are we going to do now to move forward? Or, hey, listen, I know this call went bad for you, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to do these things, and you're going to see 6 months from now, water under the bridge. You're smarter for it. You're better for it, and you move on. So I think that's another part of just experience. We can't in this career in public safety. You can't put a price tag on it. We can have a million training sessions, but until you've actually experienced it and gone through it, it loses something. And unfortunately, we're in such a high stakes environment. When I got on, people trusted the police, right? And if there was a question, it always went. People said, well, trust the police officer. It's not that way anymore. Now we're starting from the point of wrong, and everything we did is wrong. So a simple thing, a misunderstanding, a mistake, a procedural error could be the end of your career. I mean, and it's tremendous weight that's on our officers in the field every day. So you really have to take that all in and understand that that's another reason why we're not seeing good, smart people. And my argument to my legislature is I need good, smart, caring people that have a sense of duty to apply to this job. That's who I need to do this job. I can train them. If they can pass my entry level exams, I can train them to do this job. I am fully confident I can do that, but I can't impart to them a moral compass. I can't impart to them a sense of duty. I can't impart to them a sense of compassion and integrity. They have to bring that to the table. So at this point in the game, when you are constantly bashing those people that are in this profession, why anybody that possesses the skills to understand these things, why are they going to expose themselves to that? Right? Because you can only have so many martyrs. That's my other saying to them. Right? How many martyrs do you think are out there? Because that's what you're doing. You're throwing us all to the wolves constantly, and the good people that want to do this job, that are going to be effective at this job and make a positive difference, aren't going to do it because they're not going to expose themselves to it.
Do you think that, I guess my question is, what do you think the future looks like? Do you think that there's going to be a shift where that changes?
Oh yeah, I think there'll be it's a pendulum, and I think the pendulum's starting to swing back a little bit, but the problem was that it swung so far to the left that when it swings back, it's probably going to swing too far to the right. And honestly, in the world, it's the moderates of the world that get everything accomplished. The people in the middle that can bring both sides together are the ones that get things accomplished. The problem is now that nobody's going to come into that middle area because you're going to be destroyed by both sides. Um, so when I was in the academy back in the late 80s, all my instructors were guys that were from the 60s. And they would say to us, hey, you guys are coming into policing at a great time. People respect you. It's the war on drugs. We've made this a profession. You're making a living wage now. It's all good. When we were working, we had to work 2 or 3 jobs, and people were calling us pigs, and we're having people throw stuff at us and riots and all these other things. And they said, if you stay in this job long enough, you will see the pendulum swing back to the other side. Of course, now I'm 22 years old and I knew everything at 22. So we're like, yeah, right, guys. It's the stupidest thing I ever heard. That ain't happening to us. And now every morning when I wake up, that was the truest thing I was ever taught in all my academy time because it rings in my ear every single day. This pendulum did swing back, and it swung back further than where it was arguably when they were on the job in the late 60s. Um, it's a very difficult time. I think, like I said, I think it's coming back a little bit more. I think people are starting to understand that the truth is stronger than any lie. But there's been a powerful lie that's been propagated against us. And yes, bad things happen. And there's some bad police officers, but there's some bad teachers, there's some bad priests, there's some bad businessmen, there's bad people everywhere. So for everybody else, it's like, oh, well, that's that person. But when it's law enforcement, it's like one bad person is everybody's bad. And, that's a really unfair generalization. And it never works the other way. So if I would say, well, this guy over here is no good because he's a criminal, then they're like, oh, well, see, you're messed up in your head. But we're going to tell you that that's what's wrong with you. One person in Minneapolis changes the face of law enforcement across the country because we're all the same thing. And that was the argument again to my legislature is that you punish Connecticut law enforcement for something that happened 1,500 miles away. No one here in the state of Connecticut ever died from a chokehold. We don't teach chokeholds. We stopped doing that in the late 80s. Why don't you, work if you want to work for positive change and get buy-in from the police officers? Why don't you work with us instead of just reprimand us and call everybody racist? And that's why, I think we throw that word around. So it's like and or but. I mean, the word is just thrown around so much now. What is the meaning of it? I think it's all lost. Anything we don't like is now racist. That's just what we call it. And I don't think that we're not getting a fair shake, and we don't have a voice, and that's the problem. So the difficulty is trying to relay our position. The data speaks for itself, and I know I'm from Connecticut, so I know Mark Twain is famous for the line, there's liars, there's damn liars, and then there's statisticians. But the data supports it. I mean, in Connecticut, we've had the racial profiling prohibition project for nearly 30 years, where we collect demographics on every single motor vehicle stop that we do, race, gender, and a couple of other factors. And for 30 years, it's shown that there's no skew to one race other than white, which is the predominant race in Connecticut. So I think that's that's something that again, but we keep doing it, right? We keep showing, and it's the data, and it's run, and it's run, and it's run, and it's just not showing that there's a problem here. So I think everybody just needs to get back to a point of let's look at exactly what law enforcement is doing. Let's look at what they're facing. And there's a lot of support. Our community supports us. Our community loves us. And we have a lot of transient population. We have our cornerstone values. It's very simple. We treat everybody with professionalism, courtesy, and respect. We're always truthful and sincere. And when we come to work, we try and give our honest best efforts for the 8 hours of our shift. So those are our cardinal rules. We don't break those for anybody. That's who we are. right? And then we have our cornerstone our cornerstone values of service, honor, integrity, professionalism, and that's what we work on. And then the mission statement: keeping Clinton safe. Very simple, but everything we ask, if we're out there in the field and we have confusion as to what we're supposed to do, okay, what's our mission? And
Yeah.
keeping Clinton safe is what we're going to do. Keeping Clinton safe. If it's not, we need to rethink. We need to come up with another course of action. But if it is, go ahead, let's do it.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, kind of the younger generation coming into this career and, looking for good people. And I know that you're closer to retirement than you are at the beginning of your career, but
Thank God.
for for the younger generation, what words of wisdom would you share with them? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that you think would be worthwhile for them to know now.
Well, I think that a lot of things that I've seen, obviously, it hasn't all been bad, right? I'm still doing this job after 37 years, and I still come to work every day, and I haven't taken a sick day in 10 years. Um, there's a lot of things that I think we're starting to learn now, and that are becoming norms in policing, which weren't norms when I grew up, like, a work-life balance, officer wellness. We focus on this a lot now, and it's really being imparted to our officers that you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit, right? And that's a very important part. Now, when I got on the job, it was like, suck it up, kid. I just came and I just saw a kid murdered, and I got to go now and take a complaint from somebody who's saying that their neighbor's cat peed on their lawn. But and you come back and you see that, and your lieutenant goes, "Hey, suck it up, kid. Get out there, man. You got another call. Dodge it. Get going." Um, Probably not the best thing for us, right? Blowing off steam was going out with your friends after work and going to the bar, and we call that choir practice. That's not was not healthy.
Right.
I think now, and we're mandating a lot of this stuff. So some of the things that came out of police accountability in 2020 here in Connecticut, I think were very positive things. A psychological evaluation every 5 years, and some other things that I think could be seen as very positive, but they were just packaged in such a punitive package that everybody just pushed back against it. And my whole thing to my legislature and to the governor's office is constantly like, whatever you're going to do, you got to show us some support, right? I think more than anything else, it doesn't mean you got to write everybody a check for $1,000 or whatever you're going to do. Just show some support, stand behind us, right? And don't be disingenuous about it. You have to do both. You could say, because they get out there now at election time and go, oh, of course we love the police and the police are wonderful. But when it comes to actually helping us, they don't want to do that. There's no legislation to help us out and help make improvements that we've been asking for many, many, many years, and things that are already existing. We're not reinventing the wheel. Like here in Connecticut, we're proposing, I propose that we have something like the GI Bill. We'll pay for your college, right? But once you graduate, you owe Connecticut law enforcement, whatever department you're with, whatever number, 5, 6, 7 years. If you leave prior to that, you have to pay back the loans. And if you're on for 10 years and you have children, then they get to go to a state school for free. And those aren't hard things. And it's really not, it's not a cost item. It's a cost offset. They're already giving classes. We're just putting more bodies in them. It's not like they're opening a new school for that. But of course, and this year I thought we were making very good progress on it, and we had some headway on it. By the time it got through the legislature, we were down to, it was a first responder bill. So it now only was law enforcement, it was firefighters, it was EMS, and a variety of other people, which probably total number of, upwards of 25,000. And then you would get a tuition waiver if you were a sworn officer for more than 2 years, but not more than 5. And then only 200 of those. So, I mean, statistically, I said to the governor, why don't you just give everybody a lottery ticket? Because you got better odds of winning that than you do of getting this tuition reimbursement. So, don't say that you love us and we do an important job, and then we ask you for simple things to try and get some good people to come back into the profession, and this is what you give us.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing the challenges, but also some of the words of wisdom you have for, how we can start to see improvement moving forward. And hopefully we do see that pendulum swing, and hopefully it's before you retire. I think that that would be
Well, I think
good.
I've been very lucky. So I've been fully staffed for my 10 years here, because I think we have a good work environment. And my last three hires were young people that grew up in the town and they want to come back and they wanted to give back to the community and they're doing a wonderful job. So, I don't want to sound like, see what I'm saying? This is why I have to leave. I don't want to sound like I'm the negative guy because I'm really not a negative guy, but now I'm sitting here going, okay, if we're wrapping up, I just talked about a lot of negative stuff. I hope people aren't going to say like, wow, get that curmudgeon guy off of there. Good God, he's complaining about everything. But listen, this job is still the best job on the planet Earth if you do it right. And you will have the opportunity to have a positive impact on people when they have nowhere else to go. And that's what I try to impart to all my staff. Don't be annoyed that when you got called out on some call that you may think is silly. Those people called the police because they had absolutely nowhere else to go, right? And they are looking to you to help them to get some kind of solution, to get some kind of resolution. And if they called you, that means they have faith that you can do that.
Yeah.
So it's not all lost, right? I mean, I think, it gets lost in the national narrative, but I think at the grassroots, the vast majority of people respect law enforcement. They do. But see, you have a voice out there that's so loud, which is, again, we talked about this in the beginning, right? What are people going to judge me as if I say I support law enforcement? I'm going to be a racist and they're not going to talk to me, or they're going to say I'm a bad person because I support law enforcement. That's the loud voice in the room right now. But everybody knows, like, how many people have had interactions. We have millions upon millions of interactions every single day across the country with so many positive outcomes. Well, you never hear that, right? You hear the one out of the 50 million that wasn't good, right? And then it gets played. And then you're seeing stuff from other countries and they're just playing it. And you notice how whenever you look on your feed that comes on over your browser, you think it's in my neighborhood, but no, it was in Texas, or it was in Ohio, or it was in Mexico, or it was in, Sweden, or in the UK. But they never tell you. You got to search to find out where it was. Oh, police officer does this, or police officer does that, or this type of incident happens. So I think people again need to understand the information that they're getting, and they need to quantify it. They really do. They need to quantify the information that they're getting and not accept that everything coming across your screen is, number one, true or valid, and number two, that it's really in your world, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate you. I really do think that shedding light on a lot of the challenges, I think, is going to be relatable for a lot of people who are listening and who are in the profession. But I also appreciate the ending of it's still the best job ever, and how do we just continue to hire
Absolutely.
good people? How do we continue to support the people who are doing this really hard job,
Mm.
but really amazing job? And how do we make sure that they have long and successful careers?
Yeah, I think, and that's that big thing that we're at a dangerous crossroads right now because we haven't had the amount of applicants that we need to apply, and I'm afraid that people will start lowering the bar. We can't lower the bar. You need to have a certain level of integrity and character to do this job and do it well. And if we're going to take people that are susceptible to making bad choices, it's really going to be harmful. And basically, you're going to get what you're saying you're trying to prevent, which didn't, it wasn't widespread. It was very almost statistically uh, insignificant. Obviously, I'm not downplaying any of these things, and all these situations are difficult, and they happen. But when you look at the grand scheme of things and you put it all in, at any other industry, this would not be uh, what it is right now. And I think there's a lot of different things occurring with that. But again, anybody that wants to help people wants to have a positive impact and make a real difference. I mean, so if you're looking to make a real difference in life, this is a profession that very few professions can offer you the type of immediate satisfaction in knowing that you helped some people out of their darkest times and their darkest hours. You were the one that came and saved them and saved lives. So we save a hell of a lot more lives than we take.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming
So
on here today.
no problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Of course.